You're alive, and may we all be alive forever in this world. Only goodness. Anyway, we are in starting the class called Biblical Laws, Halachah, and my husband will start the class first, and then I will come in right behind him, back to back in this class, so that you can get a little of everything. So I hope you enjoy the class. I'm going to send it over to him now. Let's see how we do this. Help Hashem, only goodness.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Rabbi Schaefer, and with my Rebbetzin Yiska, we hope to share with you some laws, especially about Purim, which is coming up a week from this Saturday night. That would be the night of April 23rd, and Purim would be starting about an hour after sunset. It's a very lovely, beautiful holiday, a joyous and wonderful holiday, and God wants us to celebrate it as a Torah holiday. We realize that our brethren are in a terrible situation in Eretz Yisrael, and we have different things to fulfill here on earth. And we wish we could celebrate with our brethren, brothers and sisters in Israel. And believe me, they're doing the best they can too. Those who are in a safe situation are going to fulfill the four beautiful, beautiful commandments of Purim, which I'll discuss briefly in a moment, and then go into more detail. There's a time for everything, and even though things are very severe at this time, by our bringing light and joy as best as we can into our lives and those around us as best we can, this brings the Almighty's joy and His desire to save His people all that much stronger. So it's a very, very important thing to remember. And that's the reason that we're learning these laws to try to fulfill them. I mentioned last week and in past weeks that the holiday of Purim is a weekday, but because of its very special feeling and atmosphere, it really feels like a festival, one of the strict festivals like Passover, Tabernacles, and the Holiday of Weeks, Shavuos. It's really a very, very unique day, a very wonderful day, and it's a day of showing great love for each other, which in itself is a tremendous bond to help our brethren across the ocean in Eretz Yisrael. So we're remembering that there are four commandments to be fulfilled in Purim. They're all enjoyable to do. One is a challenge, I have to admit, to hear the reading of the Megillah from beginning to end carefully, hear every word. That's a bit of a challenge, and it's not so easy for everyone. And I'll be honest that there are many people that can't fulfill it because either they don't have the patience or it's a little bit too much for them to listen that long. But if you have a huge, huge mitzvah to fulfill, why are we reading the book of Esther? It's not a history book. It's not just for culture. We're reading it because when we read it, the Almighty remembers how He saved the entire Jewish people who were all scheduled not over years. In fact, this war and even the damage of our enemies usually takes a lot of time. This was supposed to be a quick job, spick and span. 13th day of Adar, all the Jewish people, God forbid, were scheduled to be eliminated. And God switched this around for Nafo, who was those beautiful words in the book of Esther. Everything became overturned, and the one who planned to annihilate us and got permission from the king, got support from the king over the entire civilized world, it was completely reversed, and he and his 10 sons were hung. He intended the gallows for, Haman, intended the gallows for Mordecai, and he built it. I was just looking at this today to share this with you, just to show the hatred and the incredible brutality of enemies of the past as well. Why did he have to have a gallows that was 50 cubits high? You don't know how big a cubit is, so I'll tell you. It's about 2 feet. So this gallows has to be 200 feet high. Why does it have to be so high? He would accomplish his goal. His arch enemy was Mordechai, the leader of the Jewish people, member of the Supreme Court of the Jewish people. Mordechai alone, from all the people in the kingdom, refused to bow to Haman. It's an important lesson for us. And unfortunately, all the Jewish people were placed in a very dangerous position, and Mordechai understood the severity of his not bowing down to Haman. He also understood the importance of not bowing to evil. Do not bow to evil. Do not bow to Hamas, to Hamas, or Haman, either of them. These are things for us to remember. As you hear, there's so much criticism, and I have no use for these people, no use for the President of the United States. We're supposed to show respect. God commanded Moses to show respect for Pharaoh. We have to show respect for Joe Biden. Not even call him Joe, President Biden. It's all going to be.
Joe.
It's all going to be ironed out, and the Almighty is fully aware of what's going on. Everyone has the common sense to know that if you leave a quarter of the enemy intact and just pretend to have peace, pretend, they don't even keep their word. The last time there was a ceasefire, they broke it. And you can look into the news if you don't believe me. You can look back into the records of the news from before. So this is something you have to do, just what the Jewish people did on Purim. Exact same thing. They didn't leave. Even those who were in the capital city, which is where the king lived with Queen Esther, in the capital city where the king himself resided, Shushan, which is still there today, by the way, Persia, which was ancient Persia. There, after the main war on the 13th of Adar, which is the day before Purim, that's when we had permission to completely defend ourselves. And they had permission to kill us still too. That never was rescinded. It was never taken away. We have to remember that so much. What a miracle it was that the Jewish people, a minority, were able to knock off all these horrible enemies all around the world. So leave the few hundred that are in the capital. That's what they're telling us. Leave Rafah. Whether it's a quarter or a few hundred or 1,000, whatever, is not important. It was clear to Mordechai and Esther that those still in the capital city were so stubborn and so incredibly hateful, they had to be completely wiped out too. So Queen Esther asked for an additional day. Can you imagine telling President Biden an additional day, an additional city? Think about it. Think about these things. The Torah is not just a history book. It's not a history book. It's a teaching book, an illustration book. Be warned, be aware of these horrible enemies. And you leave one that you could eliminate, that one gets up again and goes and has to hurt and kill, God forbid, another Jewish soul. Now, bear this in mind, that this is what has to be done today with Rafah. Rafiah, however they pronounce it. Rafah, they're pronouncing it, most of them. You cannot leave a quarter of the enemy. You can't leave an eighth. You can't leave a tiny few. These are very, very vicious, brutal, below animal, way below animals. Animals are wonderful. The most wild, vicious animal is wonderful compared to these people. Why do animals kill? To make a living. Do they get paid for it? They have to eat. So God has created them. That's until the Mashiach comes, when there won't be that kind of killing from the animals either, by the way. But right now, as we wait these last few moments before Mashiach, wild animals, very vicious animals, have to do their thing. Human beings are supposed to be better than that. These vicious human beings not only have to destroy Jewish people, they have to maim them, they have to deface them, they have to mutilate them, disgrace them. unbelievably. And they are related, in my opinion, although they're Arabs from Yishmael, they seem to be Amalekites, because the Amalekites were that as well too. They attacked the Jewish people. Haman was a descendant of Amalek, by the way, a descendant of Amalek, and his hatred he took with him as well. Baseless, completely unnecessary. I remind us all again, as a matter of fact, on the day of Purim, which will be Sunday, it's a week from Sunday, on the day of Purim in the morning, the attack of Amalek is read in the Torah. Before reading Megillah Esther, the story of Esther, in the Torah, the attack of Amalek is recorded. We weren't near him. We're not going to his territory. We weren't going to take it, mess with him whatsoever. Completely, totally out of hatred, just like Hamas. Just like Hamas. There are many, many comparisons there. So let's keep it straight and let's tell the truth. People don't understand why this has to be done. Anyway, in the story of Esther, we see that the king didn't start up with the Jewish people. In fact, he invited them to his big party. He knew they'd be sinning, by the way. That was also one of his motives, because he knows that when you make the Jewish people sin, they lose their protection from God. If we're our own worst enemy, if we only do what God asks us to do, nobody can touch us. Nobody can touch us at all. The time of King Hezekiah, etc. There were something like over almost 200,000 enemies, and King Hezekiah went to sleep. How could you sleep? We had surrounded this enemy, and that the Syrian enemy intended to destroy the temple. They all died. God saw to it that they all died. When we do what God tells us to do, nobody can touch us. Let's please remember that. Let's please remember that. Anyways, I was trying to say, I'm taking a lot of time with this, but I think the meaning of the holiday is so important. Instead of just reading the rules and regulations, I want us to realize how beautiful they are. And as I started to say, the king didn't start up with us. This wicked Haman, Sinwar, God should destroy him immediately. Sinwar is the Haman right now. He has to be. Did you know that he was the one on his own? That he planned and organized October 7th? Most people don't know this. And the other hateful Hamas people, they are very angry at him. They weren't invited to continue the murdering and the brutal mutilation of Jewish people. They're angry at him. They weren't invited. He does it all on his own. He's the Haman. And he's still around, and he's still escaping. We have to pray to God that he'll be destroyed as fast as possible before he could do any more damage. Why I'm bringing this out is because the king himself didn't start up with us. He had his hatred too, but he was not showing it. Then Haman approached him, as I told you, and gave him a big song and dance of hatred, which I'll read to you again, and I'll go over some of it as well. And then I want to at least go over one of the beautiful commandments that we have to fulfill on Purim. I'm going to read the whole thing first. He said, Yeshno, there is Am Echad, one people. We know who they are. Mufuzah, they're scattered, Mufurad, and they're separated. B'chol medinos machosecha, in all of the provinces of your kingdom. Remember, Ahasuerus rules over the whole world. There are emperors and kings under him. V'dosihim shonos b'kol am. Their laws, Jewish law, Torah law, is different than all the other nations. Yes, just say they don't keep the rules of the king, which was a lie altogether, outright lie. This is Hamas gives lies about Israel. Nothing new. It's not worth. Hear this? Kill people, genocide. This was genocide. Not what we're doing. We're doing defense so that there won't be genocide again. He says, for the king, it's not worth it to leave them. They doing harm? No. Paying taxes? Yes. Living peacefully? Yes. Contributing to the economy? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. All the answers are yes. And with this hatred, this Haman, he convinced the king to give him permission to order letters to be sent around the world to destroy the people all in one day, the 13th of Adar. That's what we're dealing with. And make the comparison, please do, please do. October 7th was picked up years before this whole thing was planned. We don't really understand. Maybe someone would know. Normally, the Israel intelligence is amazing. You should know that there are thousands of terrible attacks that were thwarted. Israel intelligence found out about it and was able to catch the perpetrators in advance and take whatever measures for defense. This was a very strange attack. We still don't know why Israel was not on alert. That's not important. The important now is to have faith in God and to pray. Those who are on the Israel TV there, they say to pray to God. And certainly we should. Well, I'm going to take apart a little bit for you, and I have to leave a few minutes also for, I want to go with the beautiful laws for beautiful things to fulfill. Reading the Megillah, that's on Saturday night, and also on Sunday morning. No, a week from Saturday night. It's a week from the Saturday night, and a week from Sunday morning, the Megillah will be read again. And most of the commandments for Purim, there's just 4 altogether, not 613. Just 4 altogether to be fulfilled for the most part on a week from Sunday. What?
Are you talking about the laws of
laws
for
laws
Purim?
of Purim? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go through them. They're brief and not so brief, but they're fairly simple and all very enjoyable. So the first thing that Haman says, I'll just go through part of it tonight. Yeshno, there is one people in your kingdom. So the word I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Yesho Yoshan, in Hebrew, Yoshain, means to sleep. So Haman said to Achashverosh, go destroy Israel. Listen to Achashverosh's answer. Oh, whoopee, great! That's not the answer he gave Haman at first. The king had to be convinced. Let's see why. The king said, I'm afraid of the Jewish God. This is what puzzles me too now. But if we go on, with Haman's words, we'll see why Haman was not afraid to attack. He says, the king says, I'm afraid of their God. I shouldn't get what happened to those attacked the Jewish people in the past. They know our history. They know those in each generation who tried to attack us. They know the story of Pharaoh. They know the story of all the enemies of the Jewish people, the one who destroyed the first temple, etc. So what does Haman say? Yeshenu. They're sleeping. They're their own worst enemy, which I said to you just a few minutes. Haman knew what's going on. He says they're lax about keeping their commandments, and they've lost the Almighty's merit. They've lost the protection from the Almighty. Everybody said a few minutes ago that we're our own worst enemy. Amechud. He calls the Jewish people one people. You hear anything hateful about that? I don't. So Achashverosh says to him, if they're all one people, they've got rabbis. They have saintly people who have not sinned. And if I destroy them or try to destroy them or attack them, I'll get it but good. What does Haman say to them? Look at his evil tongue, He says that the righteous ones are also guilty of being lax, of being sinful and not keeping the Torah, and therefore they're going to get it all together. The righteous and the not righteous. Then he says to them, the Mephuzer, they're all scattered. How does that show hatred? We see already from his first remarks, each one is intended Don't worry, Kingy. Don't worry. Don't worry. They're in trouble anyway with God. Methuselah. This is interesting. I'll just take a minute or two on this one. Why is it a reason to destroy a people, genocide, just because they're scattered? So he says, this is what the king says in Haman's words. If you're worried, your majesty, that I'll make a bald spot in your kingdom, that you shouldn't worry because they're scattered amongst all the people all around the world. There won't be a barren, destroyed area because they're scattered all around. So nobody will even notice the difference. So I just want to tell you that a little bit. I like to explain things, especially from my own experiences, because this is something that you probably do not relate to. So I'll tell you a story. The first time I believe I rode into Baltimore on the highway, first time I went, I had children in Baltimore before I moved there. I did live there for a good number of years as well. But before I moved there, I went down with my family, and we already had a married daughter there, and she's still there with her children and with her husband, and most of my kids actually are there now, my grandchildren too. So we're riding on the highway, and we reach Baltimore. And you probably had this experience that the highway is elevated over the city, and you're driving that so that you don't have to go through all the traffic. It's an elevated highway, elevated like the subway elevated. Subway, you have the subway trains that go above the street. It'll be an elevated highway. So we've reached Baltimore. Naturally, you want to look around. What does the city look like? To my horror, to my amazement, what do I see? Slums and ruins. You could look through a window of a wall of a former building and look straight through to the other side. Hey, what kind of a city is this? A slum? It's a place of ruins? Well, I went there some years later. I was living there as well. It was all gone. They cleaned it all up. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm trying to tell you. When people come to a city or a kingdom and you see a total ruins, it leaves a very horrible impression about the leadership, the king, the president, whoever it may happen to be, who happens to be the ruler, the government, person in charge. When you see ruins and you see devastation, that gives you the impression that the whole place is no good. Mm-hmm. Very embarrassing. Now, do you see why Haman pointed this out? I stress to you, O king, that they're scattered all over the place. Nobody will even notice they're gone. Because they're not all concentrated in one place. And if we destroy them all and destroy the whole city where they're located, the whole area, the whole zone, state, whatever you want to call it, nobody's going to even notice the difference. So he's a very hateful person. I want to spend a few minutes at least on the commandments of Purim. Therefore, I'm going to stop with that, and I will continue probably another time. We're not through with his horrible remarks. Again, the king wasn't out to get us to begin with. He had to convince him, and I didn't finish all of his hateful remarks. We could see how he's working harder and harder to get the king on his side. So much did he get the king on his side when Haman said, I'll pay for it. I'll pay millions. It would have been trillions of dollars to hire all the soldiers and all the people to kill the Jewish people, God forbid. The king says to him, I'll give it to you. I'll pay for it. Mm-hmm. That's how he convinced the king. So we have to realize the Almighty's tremendous mercy. We're all under one ruler and under one kingdom, no place to run, no place to go. I want to go through just very briefly, and then with a little detail about one of the commandments of which we mentioned already, that the Megillah, the story of Esther, is to be read on a week through Saturday night and Sunday morning. If there's some way that you can attend a service If you look on the computers very often have the schedules for various synagogues. And as I mentioned, there are rabbis who are not necessarily having the celebration in the synagogue. They rent a hall, or there's someone who donates their large house. And people are invited from all over in order to, just for the Purim service. This was Saturday night and Sunday morning, or just Sunday morning, perhaps even, not even Saturday night. So that's number one, if you can do that. If you cannot do that, it would be most worthy if, even online, I'm sure it's online, you can get the Book of Esther in English, just to read it Saturday night, a week from Saturday night. I'm sorry, my wife corrected me. A week from Saturday night and a week from Sunday morning. And that is a worthy thing to do. It doesn't quite fulfill the actual commandment, but it does your best. What do we always say? Do your best and let the Almighty do the rest.
Amen.
One of the other beautiful commandments that these are done during the daytime is to take two kinds of food that are ready to eat, two full portions that are ready to eat, and give it to another Jewish person. This is a way of showing love and friendship. Haman called us scattered all over. Haman called us separated from each other. This shows that we are not separated from each other. We might be scattered around the world, but we're all brothers and sisters. And you can give it to your next door neighbor. You can give it in your family. Two kinds of food that are ready to eat. You could give, let's see, a piece of cake and perhaps maybe some freshly cooked fish, something like that. Anything that is ready to eat could be treats. It could be foods. It could be meat and some other things to go with it, etc. All of these are wonderful. Some people make a little challah, like you could use for Shabbos, or just eat it on the day too, the day of Purim as well. It should be two kinds of food, but they should be edible. The former, this is, I married Rebbetzin Yiska. After many years, there was a former. The former had an uncle, the ex they call it, not such a nice name. The ex had an uncle who was in the chicken business, and they used to sell fresh chicken, frozen chicken, and also barbecue chicken. So for the Shalach Monas sending food portions, which is what we're talking about, he would send to all his nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters who were with us in those days, he would send a whole barbecue chicken. One of the four commandments on the day of Purim, which will be a week from Sunday, is to have a Purim feast. And that's why I say that the food should be ready to eat, not something you have to sit and cook. It's something that's ready to sit down. You can warm it up, of course. Warm it up and then ready to eat. So this was a whole meal right there. It was a whole barbecue chicken. You could use that for the Purim meal right there. I think actually either we did that or we used it for Shabbos. I don't remember exactly. It's too many years ago. But the idea is to show this love and this friendship. You can give to many people. You can do this for many, many people, friends, neighbors, relatives. You can send each of them a package of what we call Shalach Manas. The word Shalach Manas means sending food portions. Food portions, to talk straight. Why are they called sending food portions? Here's another beauty for it. If you can, rather than give the relative or friend, fellow Jew, whoever it is, or Jewess, whoever it is, rather than give it to them yourself, you involve yet another person. Yet another person, would you please deliver this? This shows even more friendship and more love, that not only is showing this wonderful, this really beautiful friendship and love for a fellow. It could be someone you don't know that well either. In fact, someone who's just learning about Judaism, this would be a beautiful way to help encourage them to see the beauty of Judaism by presenting them or sending someone to bring that over. In New York, in other religious communities, this is beautiful. This is just such a treat to even hear about it. You know, when you were a kid, you probably had a little red wagon. Remember the little red wagon that we all had? Most of us had, many of us had. Well, the kids are the messengers, and they load up their little red wagon with these paper bags or boxes of food portions ready to eat and with the name of the person it's supposed to go to, and they go and deliver them, or they have a list. So your message is a little boy or a little girl. It's really, really beautiful. And now it could be you have to be more cautious. I'm not sure that they may have to send an adult with them to begin. Unfortunately, very, very careful you have to be. So it could be they're going to send an adult with them now, but originally you'd go on the street on Purim Day, and the street, these are in religious communities, you see the little boys and girls all dressed up in all kinds of cool costumes. Could be a king like Ahasuerus. It could be someone with robes and a special hat like Mordecai. The little girls dressed up as Queen Esther, or anything you feel like. It could be a spacesuit. It could be anything the kids are dressed up in. Sometimes some people, and the adults do it too, to be dressed up like an Indian chief, all to bring great cheer and smiles, which it does. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to experience. It really is. A good reason to want to even live or visit a Jewish community on Purim. And the little kids are going with their wagons, and they're going from house to house and street to street to deliver the Shalom. It's a very, very beautiful thing. So, although after such a cheerful thing, and I'm mentioning the love and friendship that we show with this, if a person takes food portions, two kinds of foods, it could be chocolate bars and cookies, something that there's two different blessings that are recited, something like that. So what I'm going to tell you now is not so pleasant, but in the end, it teaches us really to do the right thing. If a person, for whatever reason, sends the food portions to somebody they're at odds with, an enemy, unfortunately, an active enemy, I'm saying the point that they really, I hate to say hate them, which is very wrong. That's so wrong, I can't tell you. But they send the food portion to them, the two food portions to them. We want to know, is that fulfilling the commandment? So I know you can't answer me back. You probably want to say, hey, that's a wonderful thing to do, a terrific thing to do. The answer is, if they're planning to continue their hatred and their really bad feelings towards that other person, they have not fulfilled the mitzvah at all. What should be done is before you send the food portions, make up with that person. Make peace and make up with that person before Purim and before Yom Kippur too, by the way. By the way, Purim is compared to Yom Kippur. You should know that's how powerful for forgiveness it is. A very powerful day. It's so far compared to Purim that the name Yom Kippurim, the Day of Atonement, is called Yom Kippurim, which means the Day of Atonements. The deeper meaning is Yom Kippur. It's a day that's only like Purim. So powerful is God's forgiveness and God's love on the holiday of Purim that the Day of Atonement is only like it. Purim is even better than that. Really something to think about. So here's the answer to that question. If for whatever reason you're going to send it to them, make up with them first. Make them a friend, or at least let them know. Let's let bygones be bygones, bury the hatchet, whatever has to be done. And then, as a beautiful expression in the right direction on Purim, send them food portions. That would be a beautiful thing to do. I just want to touch upon at least one of the other commandments is to give this special charity. Rebbe Yiska, I hear her myself, her wonderful lessons, teaches us to give charity every day. On Friday, we give for Friday and for Shabbos because we don't handle money on Shabbos. We don't say, oh, okay, today I'm off. I'll skip it. No, we don't skip it. On Friday, we give the Friday portion to charity and the Saturday portion as well. Sunday you begin anew. You begin the weekend with Sunday's portion. So the bare minimum, let's not be cheap. Let's not be cheap. The bare minimum is to give a coin to each of two poor people. And sometimes the whole thing can be embarrassing too. So if it can be done through somebody else, that would be fine also to send it to them. That's being cheap. You can send a check if you know there's a family that doesn't have what to eat. You can take some coins. Good. It's good to use coins as well and make out a nice check for them. Or what you could do is these stores have these cards that you can buy in which the one who receives the card, I call it a gift certificate, I think. A gift certificate, or stores will have a card that you can buy in which the person can present the card and use that to pay their grocery bill. And that can be done as well, but to involve coins as well, to each of two needy people. Again, this is showing us the beauty of the holiday of Purim, that you go out of your own house, you go out of yourself, and you reach out to others as well with love and compassion and with help. I'm going to let Rabbi Yitzchak continue at this point. These are two, and now you have three. You have the reading of the Megillah a week from Saturday night. Do it yourself if you can't go to synagogue, or to a public reading. And a week from Sunday morning, it's going to be repeated. In the course of the day, be sure to send. Could be to relatives also, people, local neighbors. What's this all about? Tell the neighbor, did you ever hear the Jewish holiday Purim? Teach them about the beautiful holiday Purim and the story of Queen Esther. So that during the day, hear the Megillah reading, send the food portions. Remember, 2 foods to at least one other Jew. 2 foods that have different blessings. It could be a beautiful challah, or anyways, a loaf of bread. It doesn't have to be a challah either. And perhaps maybe a portion of chicken, or it could be a box of candy and some fruit. All these different things are lovely ways of fulfilling it. Also, to set aside, if you have a charity box, it could be done that way too. If you know of this needy people that you could help before Purim or whatever, like in a little envelope, if you want to do it secretly, you can do it secretly too. Don't put in your name on the envelope, just to whom it should go. Drop it in their mailbox. That's on, say Happy Purim. Right on the if it's a check for it's write Happy Purim. It can be done that way so nobody gets embarrassed in that manner. That should be done for at least 2 poor people, needy people, on a week from Sunday, and also have a wonderful Purim feast. Have it for lunch or dinner, but have it before Sunday night. Have it during the day of Purim, the wonderful Purim feast, which can invite people as well, and put candles out. The night of Purim, Saturday night, you have a bit of a meal also, and it's going to be very late this year because of daylight savings. You light candles also. No blessing, but you do light candles Saturday night and eat a nice meal. And on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. Okay, thank you very much for attending. And please do your best to fulfill these beautiful commandments with the intention of binding us all together. God sees we're together. He will help us and save us all together again.
Thank you. Yasher koach, Rabbi. Okay, it's time for part 2, folks. I hope you enjoyed the class up to now. And with the help of the Almighty, we're going to do a little more learning in a different area of Torah. Let me see what I did here. No, it seems I'm okay here. Okay. So, let me see where I can put anything. Unbelievable. Okay. So, let me get this off the screen. There we go. And we're going to be learning today some laws of speech from Rabbi Chafetz Chaim, which are very important because if you think about it, the first 2 temples in the Beit HaMikdashim, which are the temples that were built, they were destroyed because of gossip, baseless hatred, all kinds of. We wouldn't think that attitudes and words would, what did they, when we were kids, we said sticks and stones may break the bones, but words would never harm them. And it's really not true. Um, we are judged annually at the time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are called the 10 days of awe. And that is when we are judged for our words as well for the year. And so, better we judge ourselves and what words that we're saying and not saying and doing and not doing, than to wait for Almighty God to let us know where we stand. Like my husband just quoted, you do your best, God does the rest. And so it's a very important thing to at all times be judging our thoughts, for sure judging what we allow out of our mouth, our words, and judging our actions. And I always give the example for actions as when a person offends another person and they turn around and they look, oh yeah, well, you're not allowed to do that, because the book of Proverbs says payback belongs to the Almighty. And so what are we supposed to do if somebody offends us? We are supposed to think in our mind that I'm being tested and that I'm going to pass this test and be rewarded because I'm not going to open my mouth. Think about this, that the rabbis say that if a person does not answer back, all their sins are forgiven at that moment. So that's a good deal. Is it worth what it costs? 100%. So if we're always thinking before we act, before we speak, before we even thinking about what we want to keep in our minds and what we need to take out. And why? Because as the Rebbe said, the Chabad Rebbe said, think good and it will be good. So what happens is that we have to realize that there's power even in thought. So if that's the case, we want to think good, so it will be good. And if we're not watching, I call him the pitchfork. I gave him a nickname, right? The evil or evil inclination, which there's what's called the good inclination and the evil inclination. And let me welcome, let's see, we have Delisha there and Kimberly. Welcome to the class today. And somebody else is there that's not, that didn't write in the chat, but whoever's there, welcome. And thank you for coming, because you give me an encouragement to keep on keeping on. And I love sharing Torah. It brings light to the world, that there's so much dark. And more so, it's a way of life. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of choosing, even, because we have free will, so that we will choose God's will. And by choosing God's will, we get rewarded. Leviticus 26:1 and on to about 13 verses. But if a person does not, it doesn't say choose good or evil. It says choose good. Because evil is what comes if they don't choose good. And evil is not necessarily recognizable. For example, like I was giving the example of the person who was retaliating to a person who offended them or in some way upset them. And we can't do that. We can't pay it back, because if a person sins, I don't want to sin with them. And it's amazing, because gossip is one of the only sins that is as much a sin to speak as to listen to. If a person is speaking gossip in my face, God forbid, I would be sinning by listening to it. And so that is the one sin that we have to be very careful with, very careful to make sure that we are speaking honorable before the Almighty. Wherever we go in this world, He is there. And so, whatever I do to speak to another person, I'm speaking to the Almighty. And so I want to treat all of His creation with great honor and respect. So let's go to the book a little bit. And this book is called A Lesson a Day by Chafetz Chaim. That's a picture of Chafetz Chaim there. And this book is amazing because everything is day and dated, and it gives you like a paragraph or two of Lashon Hara, which is gossip or evil speech. And you have another side where it says Sefer Shmiras Haloshin, and that is holy speech, speech of goodness. So let's see what we find here. Okay. Shmiras Haloshin builds a beautiful, radiant share in the world to come. The reward for each moment of restraining one's mouth from speaking evil speech or gossip, or in Hebrew Lashon Hara, where every righteous person is able to preview the reward that comes to those who restrain their tongues, and the resolve to refrain from speaking gossip would be unshakable in their works. The Chafetz Chaim refers repeatedly to the sage's statement that Almighty God's divine light, hidden away from the time of creation and reserved only by the righteous, is rewarded to one who turns aside from the temptations to speak any form of evil speech or gossip or insult or offense of any kind. Every time this person is tempted but exercises restraint, they merit great reward from heaven. This light, explains the Chafetz Chaim, is Almighty God's radiance, whose beauty is incomprehensible even to angels. For one whose eye is on heaven, the possibilities of meriting this light is the only incentive needed to try at every moment to guard one's tongue. Don't let words just not in the head and out the mouth. No, we have to be holy beings. If we're going to learn Torah, we have to live a holy life. When one guards their speech and engages others in conversations that are positive and constructive, the merit of Shmiras Haloshin, which is holy speech, is multiplied many times, because by exercising restraint in speech, one draws others to that mitzvah as well. The view from within, how words affect our lives. The same words that sweep through the heavens are also capable of penetrating the deepest levels of a person. And realize that there are many laws of speech, and so we must learn them in order to protect ourselves and to gain great merit of goodness and to stay away from any spankings or bronco rides. Even in the most seemingly meaningless character or chatter, the words that pass between people's work powerful changes on them and within them. What a person says, what a person hears, and what others say about that person can surely change the course of their life and even alter their substance. To see this at work, one must zoom in closely and watch, like the time lapse of photography that shows a flower blooming. The activity of words in our world is indiscernible from minute to minute, but shows up with startling clarity when viewed over time. Words have a profound effect on others. Lashon hara, which is gossip or evil speech. Hara is evil, right, husband? The direct translation of Lashon hara. Lashon is speech, and hara is evil, evil speech, right? Diminishes its victim in the eyes of words, in the eyes of others. Words have a profound effect on others. That could mean a lost job or business opportunity, a wounded or ruined marriage, a feud among friends or neighbors, a devalued reputation. Once spoken, the words carve their own path and destroying it in ways the speaker can never predict. As damaging as evil words are, they can be to the external factors of another person's life, and it has the even more disastrous potential. The self image is a malleable entity. People pick up clues as their own worth through the way others treat them. If they receive honor, they feel honorable. If they're ignored, they feel invisible. That is why, when Lashon Hara reaches back to its subject, the harm it does is so severe. For the disparaging words to reach back to the subject, it isn't necessary that there be a direct report of what was said and who said it. It can become obvious in an indirect way by the changed manner in which others treat that person. Either way, a person's vision of themselves is altered. And I want to stop a second to point out something super important, and that is that gossip, or what's called Lashon Hara, is even if a person is saying something truthful about another person, but it's derogatory, it's considered Lashon Hara. Now, if a person is in a store shopping and they see another person stealing from the store, they are allowed to go to the owner of the store and tell them, I don't mean to offend anybody, but that person over there is trying to steal from your store. even though this is a derogatory statement and it will make possibly the store owner to dislike the person who's stealing. We are allowed to tell the store owner in order to prevent loss, financial loss. But we cannot uh, be in a crowd or a group of people and say that this person is ugly or doesn't what derogatory statements, anything they would say derogatorily that will then offend the person and it will make the other people dislike them. That is the core root of gossip. Very important that we have to be so careful what we say about others, especially in the presence of that person, or even not in the presence, but it will make after a person speaks to that another person that what they said about the person who was not there makes that person now dislike the other person. That is gossip. So we have to be so careful, especially talking about other people, whether it be in their presence, whether it be not in their presence. But if they're doing wrong things, we don't want to tell other people about it unless it's like the store owner and things that were going to be stolen. So let's continue to read now in the book. May God help me with these eyeglasses. Oy, oy, oy. Huh. I wonder if the other ones would work better. But anyway, we have maybe about 10 more minutes to go anyway. Let's see what we can accomplish. For disparaging words to reach back to the subject, it isn't necessary that there be a direct report of what was said or who said it. It can become obvious in an indirect way by the changed manner in which others treat that person that something went on, huh? Shmir Toloshin, which is holy speech, increases the level of mutual respect among one's friends, family, and co-workers. By focusing on the good in others, one illuminates it and highlights it for everyone to see. And by the way, these books, the Chofetz Chaim books, are purchasable in artscroll.com online. And they're not so bad, the price, thank God. Okay. Moreover, the same wit and insight there can be used to critique another person and violate their sense of self-worth and can also serve the purpose of building it, inflecting back to that person the best Hashem Almighty God has placed within them. Words are the barometer of ego. Now we know that pride and arrogance is something that we cannot see. Many times people who are operating in pride and arrogance cannot see they're doing it. It's a very bad sin. It's equivocable to idolatry because a person is serving their own self instead of the Almighty. So I'm going to read for you a little bit here. It says, Lashon Hara, which is the evil speech, reflects the belief that everyone and everything should conform to one's own standard. It arises out of an intolerance of differences between oneself and others. someone, someone else, customs as opposed to one's own, someone else, someone else's option as opposed to one's own, someone else's financial approach as opposed to one's own. The underlying basis for focusing on these differences is the sense that one's own way is the right way. It is the egocentric need to assert the superiority of one's own way, which is, at its heart, a denial of the uniqueness with which Almighty God has endowed each human being. That is the mechanics of evil speech, Lashon Hara. Just as a person's face, just as a person's faces don't resemble each other, so too their thought processes don't resemble each other. And that's from Bamidbar Rava 21:2. I believe that's Midrash. Shmer Salashin, which is holy speech, is the prism through which one can see the validity in the various paths and options among well-meaning people. Even without agreeing or seeing the value of someone else's way of thinking, one can accept it with accept it one can accept it as valid. The Beis Yisrael, the children of Israel, Rabbi Yisrael Alter of Ger, commented on the above. The Agadic teaching says that one should accept differences in thought as readily as they accept differences in appearances. And so we have come to the whole hour for tonight. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed something. The importance of learning how to judge your words, judge your thoughts, and being very careful what you allow out of your mouth will make all the difference of in the world. That when God comes to judge each person in the 10 days of awe from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, that a person can come out with a high level of good judgment and therefore gain great merit and success and goodness in the coming year. Also, you cannot do all of that at the last minute. It takes going through day by day, judging our thoughts, our words, and our actions, so that when the time for judgment comes, we work the whole year to be good and to do good and to make it very acceptable before the Almighty, our choices and our actions. And so, I thank you for coming in. Tonight is Thursday night, so enjoy Shabbos, and we'll be back Sunday morning. Now, actually, if you're on the East Coast anywhere, there's Kimberly, but I don't see you on the top. Okay, but at least you're there. So the point is that on Sunday, we'll be back. New York time is noon to 2. My husband will be teaching for 1 hour, and I will teach for an hour back to back on Chasidus, Tanya, things on that level. So if you have any questions, comments, or good sayings about the class tonight, you're welcome to call me. Mornings are better. Remember, Shabbos, we shut the phone off. And we'll be back on Sunday for another learning session. Thank you for coming in. Almighty and Holy One of Israel, bless you all, now and forever, ever increasing and never decreasing, now and forever. Zai Gabench, God bless you all. Shalom, shalom.